afternoon and welcome to your favorite program, Meeting Point, on the Vision Card. This is Friday, the 2nd of February 2018. The Friday on which just 24 hours after the governor of the Northwest region has signed a press release suspending the keeping and the use of firearms as well as sale and purchase of ammunition within the Northwest region of Cameroon, and at the time when Cameroon is expected to promulgate into law the arms trade treaty. We're talking about those things today on the program. You're welcome. And on the platform, we've got a specialist who have been working on the ATT, the Arms Trade Treaty, and of course, those who know the different types of guns that will be explaining to us when we talk about the Arms Trade Treaty, small and light weapons, and so on. And start by greeting Colonel Didier Mvo. Good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Good afternoon.
You're welcome. So, did you get the information that the governor of the Northwest region has suspended the sales of arms?
No, not yet.
Okay, anyway, but now I'm giving you the information. Colonel, what is your take on that? Qu'est-ce que vous pouvez dire concernant donc, la suspension?
La suspension. Oui, ce qu'on peut dire par rapport à une suspension, en tout ce qui concerne les armes, il faut se dire qu'actuellement, le Cameroun est engagé avec les autres pays pour aplanir un peu cette question de la circulation illicite et irrégulière des armes légères et de petit calibre surtout. Donc, il est normal, au vu de ce qui se passe aujourd'hui dans notre pays, qu'on suspende tout ce qui peut avoir, qu'on essaie de réguler sur le terrain aujourd'hui, tout ce qui peut avoir ce que nous appelons le misusing of arms in the country, because actually, as you can see it, we are losing people. We are losing even gendarmes, actually, even civilians, even children, and so on. So we have, I think, in accordance with this approach, we have to banish all
the sale of
circulation of arms and yes.
Okay, thank you so much. So, Lionel Kungava, as a youth leader, we know very well when we talk about the security situation in the country and the press release from the Northwest region. What's your take on that?
I think it was high time for the governor to take those measures in order to secure the lives of citizens in that region, and it will also be another good
Should
move.
it be only in that region because
that's what I'm trying to say. It will also be another good move if the government really takes measures for the entire nation, because not only the Northwest is suffering from all these issues, but other regions also are suffering from the issues.
Entire nation, right in the center region.
And I think Cameroon being a nation where we have to respect the lives of the citizens and protect them, all those measures have to be taken by the governing bodies.
Okay, thank you. Eugene Galim, you've been working a lot on this issue of the ATT. Where do we place the press release from the Northwest region?
Yeah, thank you so much, Loveline. I wish to start by saying that artisanal arms or the locally made arms are now being regulated by our law. The law that was adopted and promulgated by the head of state in 2016. That's the law on arms and ammunition. And in this law, the law tries to regulate, or is a revision of the 1973 law on the use, sales, and fabrication of arms in this country. And the new law actually banned the production of artisanal weapons. So I think the governor is acting in line with the law. I don't think it's a personal decision. And of course, I'll say this is, of course, the start of the implementation of the new law on arms and ammunition.
Okay, but then briefly, we know that the production of such arms are for purpose. Some because for culture, traditional issues, and also for hunting.
Well, let me just add to say that is the purpose of those arms.
Yeah.
And they were well used in our traditions.
Okay.
And are still used in our traditions. But let me tell you that of recent, during the past decade, 10 years or so, most of the arms that have been used by armed gangs, by the Coupé de Route, and so on, are traditionally made arms.
Okay.
And I think it won't surprise you that some of the blacksmiths who produce these arms have got technology that they even produce arms that are as sophisticated as the modern weapons we are talking about. So therefore, there is need for regulation on these arms.
Thank you so much.
It's true that the suspension coming up in the Northwest is in line or in links to the current insecurity upheaval in the country. But like I said, it is in line with the current law on arms and ammunition.
Okay.
And I would say this is equally start of the implementation of that law.
Okay.
I want to add that this suspension was made by the governor, and it is for 6 months.
Speak a little bit louder.
This suspension was made by the governor, and it is for 6 months and eventually renewable. So I think within the 6 months, the government authorities on the field will try to see how people have been, how people react on that, and because the suspension also states that. They will be doing search in homes to see if people really have given back or registered back their arms to the various authorities in their communities.
Thank you so much.
And I think I just wish to add that since the enactment of the law, the use of these weapons in traditional rites, ceremony, was stopped. To use those weapons, you had to take permission from the administration. I'm coming from a locality where this is part of the tradition.
Okay.
But for close to 2 years now, if you have to use the den guns in a cry-die ceremony, you have to request for permission from the jail to be able to use those weapons.
Okay.
So,
good evening and welcome, Mr. Martin Chunku.
Good evening, lovely.
You have the mic. So we're talking about the suspension of the sale and the use of ammunitions in the Northwest region. What is your take on that?
What's my take on this? I think, as others just said, we are living a situation in those regions which is such that we need to be careful the way we implement any existing.
Is it only in those regions? Because we've got this issue of murder cases throughout the national territory in all the 10 regions of the country.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. It's just that you mentioned the region. That's
okay.
why I was mentioning a region too. But what I mean is that when you have insecurity situations, you should be careful the way you implement any legal framework that you have. And I think any decision which is taken by the public authority has a link with what we leave. So my take is that it's just normal that we are careful the way we implement some of the legal instruments that we have today.
Okay. Thank you so much. Today we're talking about the role of the national administration and the domestication of the arms trade treaty. And surely we're going to start with the genesis of this arms trade treaty. I remember last time when we talked about it, when the National Assembly was in session, there were a lot of questions about what the ATT is, and expecting the Colonel Vom to tell us a little bit. How did we come about with this ATT, the Arms Trade Treaty? Give us a genesis of it.
Merci. La genèse du traité sur le commerce des armes, qu'on appelle en anglais ATT, is yes, we began with ATT in year 2005, mainly by that date. And why we did it? We did it because in the the world, the concept was that of the regulation of trade of this trade was very weak, so that some opinion decided to seize the member state of the United Nations to harmonize the way to pour légiférer sur le commerce, not sur les armes, mais sur le commerce, on the trade, because the legislation on, we have many legislation on arms in the world, but in the matter of trade, to make the trade be responsible, to make the trade have an ethics moral somewhere, so that vers les années 2005, nous avons commencé dans le monde à décider qu'il faut régulariser, il faut essayer de réglementer le commerce des armes, parce que le commerce des armes n'est pas un commerce ordinaire. C'est un commerce qui touche à la vie des populations, qui touche au développement des nations, qui touche aux lois et règlements internationaux. Donc, vers les années 2005, on a commencé à le faire. Mais maintenant, ça a pris un peu de temps, mais c'est surtout en 2006 que ça a commencé, pour réglementer de cette manière. Sauf que, lorsque nous avons commencé à réglementer, il y avait ce qu'on appelle le POE, c'est-à-dire que le Programme d'action des Nations Unies sur les armes à feu et surtout les armes légères de petit calibre. Donc les deux, la Convention de Kinshasa qui réglemente en Afrique centrale les armes légères de petit calibre et le traité sur le commerce des armes ont évolué pratiquement au même moment. Et c'est en 2007 que les États de l'Afrique centrale ont décidé de faire ce qu'on appelle l'initiative de Sao Tomé. Et l'initiative de Sao Tomé demandait, entre autres choses, de créer un instrument juridique contraignant sur les armes légères de petit calibre. Donc les deux sont allés ensemble, mais on a d'abord adopté la Convention de Kinshasa qui réglemente les armes légères de petit calibre en Afrique centrale. Mais après, quelques années après, il y a donc eu en 2013, c'était 3 ans d'écart entre l'adoption de la Convention de Kinshasa et le TCA. Mais sur le TCA, c'est le commerce international. Et il faut bien le préciser. Ils sont deux aspects complémentaires. Parce que dans la Convention de Kinshasa, le tout premier aspect qui est considéré, c'est les transferts. Et le traité sur le commerce des armes, tout ce que vous voyez là est en réalité basé sur les transferts.
Okay. So we're talking about the Kinshasa Convention and why it came about, especially we're talking about the Central Africa. But then, should we limit ourselves to the Central Africa? What about the other parts of Africa?
I think it is very true that the actions have to be expanded to other regions, not only Central Africa, because the issue of arms.
Could we even say the world, the entire world?
That's why I'm saying to other regions, because the issue of arms is something that is affecting the entire world, and we must focus on that in order to make sure that there is a harmonized treaty going to govern the sector or the arms we are using on daily basis.
Okay. So let's get to what are we talking about? We want to talk about the ATT, the Arms Trade Treaty. Of what importance is it to us in Cameroon?
Yeah, thank you. And again, to reiterate that the Arms Trade Treaty is a global treaty.
Okay.
This is a global treaty that takes charge of the sales of arms, like Colonel said.
Okay.
Because amongst other instruments binding arms, there was never an instrument that regulates the sales in arms.
Okay, if it is global, so like you're saying,
yeah.
So where do we come about with the issue of the Central Africa and the Kinshasa?
Now, there is a specific convention.
Okay.
or a charter for Central Africa, which is the Kinshasa Convention on Small Arms and Light Weapons. And like the colonel said, this convention or this charter was adopted in 2010, 3 years even before the Arms Trade Treaty was adopted. The Convention for Central Africa focuses on small arms and light weapons. But when we're talking about the Arms Trade Treaty, small arms and light weapons is just one of the category of the arms that is part of the 8 categories of the Arms Trade Treaty. And to say this treaty, like you've just asked me, the importance of this treaty to Cameroon. I mean, if Cameroon is heading towards ratification, it's because Cameroon sees the importance of the treaty. If they did not, they wouldn't. I think the first importance is that the treaty will enable Cameroon and help Cameroon in its current fight against the Boko Haram, because the other member states in the Lake Chad Basin have all ratified this treaty, except Cameroon. That is the first importance of the treaty. So Cameroon will continue to galvanize the support Cameroon has received from member states or from state parties of the treaty. The second importance is that Cameroon will be able to participate, effectively participate in the conference of state parties and to exercise its vote as a member state or a state party to the treaty. Now, the issue here is what? When you are not a state party, you could participate in deliberations during the conference of state parties. But, unfortunately, you won't be able to vote for any resolution. And some of those resolutions or recommendations or decisions could be voted against you. So this is one of the importance why Cameroon should be part of this treaty. Okay. And lastly, like I said, the treaty enables Cameroon to be able to restructure its security mechanism and to be able to cater for the insecurities, the various
insecurity situations
of the country and the sub-region as a whole.
Okay, let me ask Mr. Martin Jonke. We'll talk about ratifying and helping Cameroon in fighting Boko Haram. I don't understand what the ratification or promulgation, even into law, has to do with the fighting of Boko Haram.
Yes, as you may know, the Boko Haram issue is a it's a high security matter which we need to address with all the means that we have, including cooperation with other countries that are suffering from the same situation. So ratifying this treaty for us, to add to what Eugene and the Colonel just said.
No, we're in the process of ratifying.
We're in the process of ratification. Yes. Ratifying the treaty for us will allow us better the way we cooperate with other countries in fighting all the security threats that we have, not just the Boko Haram issue, but any other issue that has to, that has to do with security. So as you see, the treaty is something that helps countries, not just countries in Africa, but countries all over the world, see how they work together to make sure that even though arms are necessary for defending your country, you should not be in a situation where you trade for arms illegally or for other purposes than defending the country. So I think it's something that increases the cooperation means that we have in terms of security.
Okay, so I wonder we talk a little bit, give some explicit talk on the Kinshasa Convention. Colonel, what was it really about? Can we go into the details of the Kinshasa Convention?
Merci. La Convention de Kinshasa est un instrument juridique contraignant que les États africains de l'Afrique centrale ont décidé d'élaborer afin de combattre le trafic illicite des armes légères et de petit calibre sur leur espace communautaire. Cette convention fait en sorte que la circulation illicite soit amoindrie, parce que peut-être qu'on ne peut pas complètement la verrouiller, mais qu'elle soit amoindrie. Et l'idée, c'était que l'Afrique centrale, sur les 11 États qui composent la communauté économique des États de l'Afrique centrale, il y avait à cette époque-là 7 au moins qui avaient déjà connu des conflits et des guerres. Et l'une des conséquences ou l'une des origines de ces conflits résidait dans la possession, le trafic illicite et la facilité d'obtenir les armes légères et de petit calibre. Parce que pour nous en Afrique centrale, ce n'est pas toutes les catégories des armes des Nations Unies qui tuent le plus, mais ce qui tue le plus ici, c'est les armes légères et de petit calibre. Donc, on a donc essayé de réglementer de telle manière que dans chaque État, il y ait un cadre juridique et qu'on harmonise les cadres juridiques pour que si quelqu'un tente de faire du commerce ou du trafic illicite dans un État, qu'il ne puisse pas trouver refuge dans un autre État. Et comme nous faisons de cela ce qu'on appelle la sécurité collective, c'est-à-dire que notre communauté doit se défendre collectivement contre la prolifération, le mauvais usage des armes légères de petit calibre, on a donc élaboré la Convention de Kinshasa qui va en droite ligne des aspirations du programme des Nations Unies concernant les armes légères et les petits calibres qui a été voté et adopté en 2001. Donc la Convention de Kinshasa a été élaborée et a été adoptée à Kinshasa, comme son nom l'indique, en 2010 et est entrée aussi à la signature des États en 2010. Bon, maintenant, chaque État a commencé à la ratifier à son rythme, mais voilà, c'est pour qu'il n'y ait pas... Parce que les armes légères de petit calibre, ça se cache très facilement, ça se monte très rapidement, ça se répand très rapidement. Et le véritable nom de cette convention, la convention de Kinshasa s'appelle en réalité la Convention de l'Afrique centrale pour le contrôle des armes légères et de petit calibre, de leurs munitions, pièces et composantes pouvant servir à leur fabrication, à leur réparation et à leur assemblage. Ce qui fait que ce soit les munitions, que ce soit les pièces détachées, parce qu'on peut ouvrir une usine d'armement ici clandestine, rien qu'en important les pièces, les composantes, et on monte tout ça ici. Donc tous ces aspects qui vont entrer dans notre pays ou qui vont entrer dans le territoire de l'Afrique centrale sont réglementés de façon très très stricte. Voilà à peu près, bon, les conséquences on les connaît parce qu'on ne veut pas, n'est-ce pas, toutes les conséquences des morts d'hommes, des grands banditismes qui utilisent cela, les coupeurs de route, comment on les appelle, les gardiens de bœufs et tout ça qui font de la transhumance et tout ça, il faut faire diminuer de telle manière que il y a, comme vous avez peut-être mentionné tout à l'heure, il y a un aspect qui est un aspect par exemple culturel. Dans l'aspect culturel, il n'y a pas de problème. Mais il ne faut pas que ces armes soient utilisées n'importe comment. Et on a demandé à chaque État de faire sa réglementation, sa législation qui entre en droite ligne avec la Convention de Kinshasa. Et c'est pourquoi le Cameroun, dans la mise en œuvre de la Convention de Kinshasa, a donc élaboré et adopté, voté sa loi récemment en 2016 sur le régime des armes et des munitions.
Okay, thank you so much. We just want to tell our televiewers, because this issue of the Arms Trade Treaty has a lot of questions on them, and we're receiving some questions and messages already. In the next 10 minutes, we'll surely be reading them, so just keep on sending them. I'll turn to Mr. Martin to know what's the role of the civil society on talking about this, the place of the civil society and women in particular. And we'll talk about the ATT, the Arms Trade Treaty.
Yes, you will agree with me that all of this has to do with the people, meaning that
it has to do with
the people.
With the people, okay.
Yeah. So when we talk about arms, and when we want to avoid anything that is wrong about arms, then we are trying to protect the people. So, and this is where the civil society comes in, because the people need to know what we are talking about. They need to be sensitized on the stakes. And how do you make the people be well aware of the stakes? you must tell them, you must explain, you must say what is at stake. And this is where the civil society has a role. We need to explain to our people, to our communities, why we get into those conventions and why and where are we going to benefit from these conventions.
Okay. So, Lionel, what is your youth?
Yes, I think it is something very laudable, and the question I will ask the experts here that have been working on the issue and that have been attending international conventions on this ATT.
International conference.
Yes, is to try to explain to us why now and why Cameroon being one of the last countries to ratify the convention, and also what are the mechanisms that have been put in place for the human rights, to respect the rights of the people who will be willing to own or to be in possession of guns. And the second question is, I hope in the legislation that is being put in place and in all these treaties and conventions, the law that is being voted by the National Assembly, they took into consideration the administration, because some of these permits have been sold like in our administrations, like bread in shops, and people, that's why you see some of these activities being done on the field, some with these small arms. I really want to know how they intend to sensitize the population, how they intend to make the people be aware of the importance of the new law being voted by the National Assembly.
Eugene?
Yeah, I think before I come to Lionel, I wish to add to what Martin just said, that both conventions, if you read both conventions very well, you realize that the genesis of these conventions as a result of conflicts, armed conflicts, and illicit proliferation of arms that plagued the world. And because of that, the most victims are women and children. And so therefore, when you look at the conventions, both conventions in their preambles, they take into consideration the place of the woman and the civil society. And of course, when you take the ATT, for example, the ATT recognizes the place of the woman, women and children, especially considering conflicts that affected the world, with women and children being most of the victims or the bulk of the victims of these conflicts. Mm-hmm. But equally, the ATT recognizes the voluntary role of the civil society. Just to let you know that the ATT is the child of the civil society. It's the civil society that actually led the galvanization, led the mobilization towards the adoption of the ATT. Mm-hmm. And when you take the Kinshasa Convention, in its preamble, it recognizes UN Resolution 1325, which is basically on women, peace, and security. Because at the time the Kinshasa Convention, when ECA started thinking about the Kinshasa Convention, the entire sub-region was coming out of conflict. You could bear with me the Rwanda genocide, you could bear with me the conflict in the DRC, the conflict in Chad, the conflict in Congo-Brazzaville. Mm-hmm. These are some of the conflicts that orchestrated the Kinshasa Convention. And the convention also reaffirms the importance of UN Security Council Resolution 1612, which is basically on the involvement of children in armed conflicts. Okay. And above all, the Kinshasa Convention in its Chapter 8, which is basically on the implementation arrangements, recommends the active involvement of the civil society. And on this basis, the convention calls for the adoption, for the creation of network of civil societies working on against the illicit proliferation of arms. And just to say that immediately the convention was adopted in April 2010, by October 2010, the Economic Community of Central African States, facilitated the creation of the Central African Action Network on Small Arms, which is basically a civil society network.
Okay.
Then again, let me just come back to say, Cameroon takes a lot of credit for this because in 2004, Cameroon had already created a national network on the fight against illicit proliferation.
Okay, just get this worry from one of our televiewers, Messi Angui, who is asking that who are those who are supposed to have those guns, even for private use, and how do they ensure that, because normally there are men that are having these guns, how do they ensure that the life of the women are safe? Do we go into character? It's a way of asking do we check the character of the person before giving that person a gun?
Yeah, I think you're answering the question because we have a legislation in Cameroon, the 1973 decree on the holding, on the production and the use of weapons in this country. That decree has been revised in the new law on arms and ammunition. And this decree gives the criteria on how to own arms.
Okay.
You and I could own arms, but there is a criteria for owning those arms. You have to go through a series of legislations. And like you said, the character is one of those issues that are taken into consideration before you could own those arms. But apart from that, what we are talking about, the ATT, the Kinshasa Convention, it takes into consideration the role of women, like she is asking. She wants to know, what about the role of women? Are they catered for in case of these weapons? The ATT and the Kinshasa Convention, in their preamble, clearly define the role of women in all of this.
So a woman can own an arm.
And these international conventions, which of course Cameroon has ratified the Kinshasa Convention, Cameroon is about to ratify the ATT. Cameroon is now expected to bring down what you have in those conventions down to the national legislation. And so therefore, bringing down that to the national legislation, you should be able to cater, especially for women and children, as those conventions actually recommend.
Okay. So when you talk about cater, as a woman, can I own an arm?
Yes, you can.
If you're right.
Okay.
If you follow what is expected before you own an arm.
Can Lionel, as a youth, own an arm?
Well, there is no clear definition of who should own an arm.
I mean,
in our legislation. Let me tell you. For example, the artisanal weapons. It is expected that after the death of a head of the family, that weapon is taken to the administration. That is the deal. And it is now handed to the successor of the family. So the successor can be a young person like Lionel or like me, depending on family arrangements. And then that weapon is then handed over officially to the successor of the family. So like we're saying, there is a regulation on owning arms in this country. Okay?
Okay.
I think that regulation is fair enough because there is no kind of discrimination in that legislation. So be you a woman, be you a young person or whoever.
But do we have an age limit to that?
Absolutely. If normally legally you should have a certain age before you start being a person who is likely to face the law. So you can't just be a child and then you hold an arm. No. The due diligence takes into account all of these. So because you go through a due diligence, they should make sure that morally you are somebody who will use the arm in the right way. So I think the legislation is fair enough. There is no distinction between women or youth or any other group. So anyone who is qualified as provided by the law may own an arm.
And just to add to Martin that you are disqualified on the basis of the due diligence and the regulations that provide that entry point or whatever for you to own an arm.
Okay, let me get.
Before you go to the next, I wanted to ask our expert here if it is not the administration put in place that is not permitting this legislation to be implemented normally on, especially in Cameroon, because as we said, there's no age limit for young people to own guns. I know young people who are of the majority age or who are above 21 who own guns, but how do they go about getting the gun? The due diligence you're talking about.
Like
do they own the gun legally?
Of course. But do they really take into consideration that? Those are most of the things we really have to ask ourselves, because what we're seeing going on in the country now is we have to question all those situations, because the administration has its own part to play.
Excusez-moi, je voudrais juste ajouter quand même que, à partir de la convention de Kinshasa, on ne peut pas, dans un pays, autoriser le port d'armes à n'importe qui. L'âge, lorsque l'administration, vous faites une demande pour avoir une autorisation de port d'armes, une autorisation d'achat d'armes, on va nécessairement regarder votre âge. Si vous n'avez pas la majorité légale...
Quelle est la procédure même?
Non, la procédure c'est quoi? La procédure dépend maintenant de chaque État.
Ok.
Bon, seulement, vous allez devant le préfet, vous faites une demande et on vous donne la liste des pièces à fournir. Et on va faire une enquête sur vous. Par exemple, on parlait des femmes tout à l'heure. Si on se rend compte que dans la vie de couple, un individu est généralement violent, on ne lui donnera pas l'autorisation de port d'armes, d'achat d'armes.
Excusez-moi, mon colonel.
Pour les enfants.
Ce que j'étais en train de dire, c'est qu'il y a des jeunes qui ont atteint l'âge de la majorité, ça veut dire 21 ans, que je connais bien au Cameroun, qui détiennent des armes légalement, mais qui ne sont pas nécessairement passés par cette enquête de moralité que vous êtes en train de parler. C'est pour ça que je dis que le gouvernement a son rôle à jouer là-dedans, et un rôle qui est très crucial. Parce que lorsque vous vendez les autorisations d'achat et de port d'armes comme de pain, ça devient de plus en plus compliqué, et ces armes se retrouvent partout dans des quartiers. Moi, je parle parce qu'il y en a qui marchent avec ça dans des véhicules, qui ont des autorisations, qui ont des ports d'armes, qui s'asseyent dans des lieux publics avec ces armes.
Est-ce que vous avez vu sur eux ces autorisations de port d'armes et d'achat d'armes?
Oui, bien sûr.
Bon, sachez une chose.
Parce qu'ils ont été interpellés et qu'ils ont présenté.
Bon, moi je veux bien que d'abord ces autorisations soient authentiques. Oui, parce que là je veux savoir si ces autorisations sont authentiques. Si elles le sont, il faut savoir qu'à partir de la nouvelle loi de 2016, ça ne se passera plus comme ça au Cameroun.
Alors, quels sont des actes? Moi j'ai un problème. Nous avons toujours des lois et ces lois-là restent au niveau macro. Ces lois ne descendent pas. Par exemple, un sous-préfet qui a le droit, ou un préfet au niveau départemental qui a le droit de donner l'autorisation à un citoyen quelconque dans le Boyo, dans le nord-ouest par exemple. Vous êtes à Yaoundé, vous parlez de ces traités, vous parlez de tout ce qui se passe. Quels sont les mécanismes que vous avez mis sur pied pour disséminer l'information? La convention de Kinshasa, la loi de 2016 qui a été votée et tout autre instrument qui légifère leur vente d'armes au Cameroun. Voilà vraiment
l'information est donnée.
Je vous comprends. Les Camerounais puissent savoir et que
brièvement. Oui. Aujourd'hui, le travail que nous faisons au niveau de la société civile est d'abord ce travail d'information sur le terrain. Donc, parce que nous nous sommes rendus compte que l'État seul ne peut pas disséminer la connaissance de la loi, les enjeux liés à ces lois. C'est pour cela que la société civile est engagée aujourd'hui à faire ce travail pour le compte de l'État et pour la sauvegarde des vies de nos citoyens. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes en train de le faire. Lorsque nous allons passer à une étape supérieure d'ici demain, quand il y aura peut-être la Commission nationale et qu'il y aura un plan d'action national pour la mise en œuvre du traité sur le commerce des armes et de la Convention de Kinshasa, c'est l'une des tâches les plus importantes. Il faut que là où on fabrique ces armes-là, chez vous là, que le chef de village sache que désormais, il a une responsabilité par rapport à ça, parce qu'il doit surveiller, il doit disséminer. On va renforcer leur capacité à tout le monde pour que la loi soit connue de tous. Et que quand on va dire que nul n'est censé ignorer la loi, que ce soit une réalité.
Thank you. Mike, before you
I have
go to
another
that.
question,
No,
please.
before you ask that question, just hold on. Let me know something.
I have another
Probably when
question
you say
concerning-
something. Yeah, you
concerning the-
ask the question. Let me just know. You have the microphone. Let me just know about the progress made in the universalization and implementation of the Arms Trade Treaty at the level of the government.
Le gouvernement a beaucoup fait.
Okay.
Le simple fait que le gouvernement accepte de s'engager dans la négociation pour le traité sur le commerce des armes, que le gouvernement aille dans la procédure normale, a voté, le Cameroun a voté, a été parmi les pays qui ont voté. Le Cameroun est revenu. Ça n'a pas pris beaucoup de temps. Le Cameroun a engagé, n'est-ce pas, s'est engagé dans la voie de la ratification. Et sur le plan interne aujourd'hui, le Cameroun est un pays qui a disons, ratifié en interne. Bon, c'est vrai que la ratification d'un traité international aboutit lorsque les instruments de ratification sont acheminés auprès du dépositaire qui, en l'occurrence, est le secrétaire général des Nations Unies. Donc le Cameroun a tout fait. Et le Cameroun est aujourd'hui parmi les pays qui bientôt vont se dire « j'ai ratifié le traité sur le commerce des armes ». Donc le Cameroun a beaucoup fait. Donc il n'y a pas, sur ce plan-là, il n'y a pas d'équivoque. La volonté politique s'est vraiment manifestée et on a fait tout ce qu'on peut. Et aujourd'hui, c'est passé à l'Assemblée dernièrement, au Parlement du moins dernièrement. Et aujourd'hui, nous sommes maintenant dans la deuxième phase, qui est la phase qui doit sortir ce que nous avons fait en interne pour aller vers l'externe, c'est-à-dire au niveau des Nations Unies.
Yeah, at the level of the civil society.
Yes, let me add something to what the Colonel just said and also address Lionel's concern.
Okay.
I think about what the government has done, it even goes beyond what the Colonel just said, because even before signing and ratifying, because we should even say that our country has already ratified. We're just waiting for that ratification to become known by the UN when we deposit the documents at the UN Secretary's office. So about the ratification, legally, at national level, the National Assembly has already done what was to be done for the treaty to be ratified. Now, about what Lionel was saying a while ago, I think we need to be careful the way we affirm things. If you say that you know people who hold arms.
Yeah, you can be called up to arms.
Yes, the holders of arms who, in your view, should not hold arms, then there's something wrong somewhere. And this is what the law comes to deal with. You are not supposed to hold an arm if you are not qualified for that. And if you know people who are not qualified and who own arms, then there's something wrong with these people.
Okay, so what is the civil society doing when we talk about universalization and implementation of the ATT?
Yes, I think the Colonel started saying what the civil society is doing, because in terms of getting people to know what is being done and what is at stake, the civil society is working to bring the information down to the people, to communities on this. And I think even our presence here is about the civil society working for people to know what's at stake. So I think that's our role as civil society, to inform the communities, to inform people on what is done, also to inform people on what the government is doing, because we should be fair the way we say things, to let people know what has been done, and if there's anything which is still to be done, we also raise the issue for the government to take care of it.
Okay, so Eugene, tell me a little bit, how is this Arms Trade Treaty implementation evaluated when we come to the level of government in order that they can meet up with their commitments?
Yeah, I think before that, before we get to the evaluation, because that happens once the documents of ratification are deposited.
Like Martin said.
Yes, I want to come back to the progress made by the government. I think one very big thing the government has done is the promulgation into law, or the law that was voted on arms and ammunition. This is
at the level of National Assembly
and promulgated by the President of the Republic. So that law has become a legal law, official law binding arms in this country. And this, of course, was the first step to the ratification. Okay? But I won't go without saying that the civil society, apart from what Martin mentioned, has contributed a lot, starting from the adoption to the signing and now pushing for the ratification. I think we have been at the forefront, mobilizing, advocating the government, advocating other key stakeholders, including members of parliament. I wish to inform that by the time the law got to the National Assembly, more than half of the parliamentarians were already aware of this law because of the work we did with the parliamentarians. But equally with the civil society and even with the journalists, because we realized that few journalists understood what this is all about. And we thought it was important to have a core of journalists that understand what the ATT and arms issues is all about, so that when they report credible information about this. Coming to the evaluation of the ATT, the first thing that the state does once we ratify is submitting the initial report. That initial report is submitted in the month of May. I'm afraid Cameroon will be able to submit that report this year.
Who submits? The government?
The government.
And the civil society, what's the role in that?
The civil society only complements information, depending on the fact if the civil society is part of any institution created by the government to take charge of this report. For example, if the National Commission for the Management and Control of Arms is set up by the government and the civil society is part of it, then the civil society will be able to galvanize other civil society in the country to be able to contribute, to be able to complement whatever report the government is submitting. And like I said, the government starts with the initial report, and then each year an annual report is submitted. But there is one thing I want to make clear about this, the Arms Trade Treaty, the reports of the Arms Trade Treaty. Those reports, it depends on the government. The government could make them public, and they could make them not to be public. So in the course of submitting the report, the government indicates to the ATT Secretariat how they wish that report could be exploited by the Secretariat.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we'll go a little bit faster. I want to know what is expected of a national administration. Colonel, what is expected of national administration in writing Cameroon's report to the ATT, briefly?
Oui, tout simplement, c'est que ce sera remplir une des obligations du traité. Chaque État doit faire des rapports au niveau du secrétariat du traité qui est basé à Genève, en Suisse. Donc, ça rentre aussi dans des mesures de confiance entre les États membres du traité. Ça fait aussi que les informations que vous donnez peuvent vous servir à avoir beaucoup plus d'appui, beaucoup plus d'apport de la communauté internationale au cas où vous en auriez besoin. Faire des rapports, ça veut dire aussi montrer que la volonté de l'État qui fait les rapports est toujours présente, elle ne manque pas. Et aujourd'hui, lorsqu'on parle de rapports, c'est que les Nations Unies demandent que chaque année, qu'on fasse des rapports pour voir jusqu'où nous avons évolué, comment est-ce que nous conduisons notre mise en œuvre de la Convention ou du traité en question.
Okay, thank you so much. It is like we've been held down by time. Maybe as we're moving out, or just expect Colonel to say a last word, especially telling us about the clarification of the National Commission for the Management of Control of Arms. Your last words on that.
Oui, tout simplement pour dire que dans la nouvelle loi camerounaise sur les armes et les munitions, il y a un organe, il est prévu un organe qui va coordonner toutes les activités concernant cette question des armes légères et de petits calibres. Donc nous attendons tout simplement qu'elle soit mise sur pied, et c'est ça qui va déclencher tout ce que les gens verront au Cameroun, parce que les gens seront surpris par l'ampleur du travail qui sera fait à partir de cette commission nationale.
Thank you so much, Martin. As a civil society, what is your role in that commission and your last words?
First thing is a wish. We wish when that commission comes,
Okay.
civil society will have a space in there for the civil society to play its role. We will need a space in the commission.
Okay. So, Lionel?
Yeah, I think it is always very good to legislate a domain like this, which brings a lot of insecurity in our various nations. So it's a good move, but our will is that let the people get the information at the base and let them be aware of what's happening.
Okay, thank you. So, Eugenie, what is the last word?
Yeah, I think my last word also goes for the National Commission for the Management and Control of Arms, whatever appellation will be given to it. But to say there's a lot of work to be done on the ground. And that work on the ground is done by the civil society. So there's no way the government should afford to create such a commission without the participation of the civil society. Mobilization, dictating, getting information, the civil society is very important, and it is the civil society that should be able to do this work.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think because we not exhausted this particular theme, we're going to come back, especially talking about this commission, the National Commission for the Management and Control of Arms, and the place of the civil society in that. Because if it is only the government that is writing the report without a side report by the civil society, so that human rights report, the civil society has a right to send its own report, a universal report on human rights. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned to more programs on Vision Cat, and have a blessed weekend.